and welcome to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We're glad that you joined us for today's episode where we will be talking about the entire season 2 of Peacemaker. And when I say we, I'm not using the royal we. I mean myself and my good friend Caleb. How are you doing, Caleb?
I think it would be kind of fun if you started using the royal we in just everyday speech. We, yes, it makes you so dignified,
It
Mark.
does, which is not the easiest thing to do. So
yes, we love that. We're so glad to be here today. Glad to
I
be with
love
you,
it.
Mark. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get started by reminding you that we're brought to you by the Center for Progressive Christianity. It's a great place to get all of your progressive Christian resource needs met. You can find more out about them at progressivechristianity.org. We're also sponsored by the Progressive Christian Alliance, which is a diverse, inclusive community reclaiming faith through justice, compassion, and radical welcome. And we're sponsored as well by the Christian Left, where following Jesus means standing up for the poor, the oppressed, and the truth, no matter how unpopular it gets. And then the little last piece of housekeeping we got to get is that we will be rolling out all the spoilers we can figure out how to do. This is a great season, and there are plenty of spoiler-ish things that we probably will be talking about. So just know that that is going to be happening. And then finally, we need beverages. We need beverages if we're going to really get into this. Do you have a themed beverage that you're bringing to the show today?
I do. I've got a drink called Peacemaker. Maybe what I had last time. I can't remember, but it is mezcal, bourbon, and bitters. And so my Peacemaker right
Lovely.
here.
It
How about
is
you?
what you had the last time. And
Of course it
I
is.
am also having a Peacemaker made differently. That
Yeah.
is what I had the last time. And it is one of my favorite bitters makers is called Bitter Milk. They do an old-fashioned milk mix. So this is their old-fashioned mix with some Campari and some whiskey, and it comes out that red that we kind of see
red.
on his outfit. So we're both having a bit of the Peacemaker as we discuss the Peacemaker. It should be a lovely time. Thanks to all of those who have joined us. We're going to have a quick drop, and we'll come back on the other side and geek out about this a little bit. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Hello and welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. As you've already heard, we're talking about Peacemaker Season 2, and we already talked a bit about Season 2, but there were only a few episodes, and now we've got the whole season. So just in case you're not familiar with Peacemaker, Peacemaker is a comedy superhero TV series on HBO Max. Peacemaker is in the DCU, which now has 3 official entries: Creature Commandos,
Good
Superman,
one.
and
Another good one.
Peacemaker Season 2, and all the stuff from Season 1 that James Gunn wanted to keep. And this season has been really good. It's currently got a 96% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. And Mark, I feel like as we're getting started in this segment, I need to make some repentance. So you had asked in the last show about the title theme, and I'm like, it's kind of underwhelming. And I sent you a meme last week, and it's in the meme, the person said, "Me, Season 2, Episode 1. This is okay." And then it says by the end of the season, they've got it cranked up like to 10 to 11. They're like, God knows I've had some rough fucking years. And that was me. That was me by the end of this season. I was into it. How about you? How'd you feel about that?
I was kind of the same place. I agreed with you that it was kind of lackluster, that they set it up to be a battle that they couldn't win because we're all expecting so much, and that it didn't feel like it really did it. But every time you watched it, it got better, and he tweaks them each week. He tweaks them. Gunn tweaks them just a little to kind of highlight the story that's going to be happening in that week. And the song ended up really growing on me. And when we saw the live performance in the final episode, I was ready for it. Yeah. So I'm in the same boat. I'm in the same boat.
You were singing it?
Man.
Were you singing it during the live performance?
It was great, man.
Rocking out. Yeah.
It was fantastic. I admit it. Yeah. They won me over too. Yeah.
And I think also like they did as you predicted, and as they did in the first season, hide some elements of the of what was coming over the course of the season in the dance moves. And one of the things we got was the prediction about Earth X, and about how Earth X was actually a Nazi planet where the Nazis had won World War II. And so that was kind of controversial because they had put like Peacemaker's dance in, I think, Minecraft or something, some Roblox, maybe it was Roblox or something.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, Roblox. That would be easier. Minecraft would be really hard.
It'd be pretty difficult. Yeah.
But in Roblox, right, they put the swastika dance.
Yeah. Well, that thing that we made so much fun of. Yeah. Turns out that when you do them both ways and overlap them, it's a swastika.
So that leads me to my question, Mark. How did you feel about the big twist that the perfect world, Peacemaker's perfect world, was actually Earth X, where the Nazis had won? And how long did it take you to realize that's where they were?
It took me longer than I would have thought. There was, gosh, I wish I could remember the moment, because there was a moment where all of a sudden, I think he was on the street, and we kept getting different shots of people who were watching from the street. And I don't know what it was, but all of a sudden it hit me. I was like, that's weird. Like, everybody's white.
Pretty white.
And Gunn has traditionally been really good about being like making sure that lots of different types of folks are represented, just like you would be in the real world. And there was just this moment. It's funny. I don't know if it's funny or not, or sad.
Yeah.
I noticed it, but I wasn't convinced.
Yeah.
I was like, nah. Yeah. It must just be a weird kind of, they cut in the wrong places, and that's just but then how about you? When did you figure it out?
Well, yeah. So I think he did do a good job, I think, of tricking folks, and I think part of that is that you cut back and forth between the alternate dimension and the real dimension, the prime dimension, a lot. And I guess maybe that should like make it clearer, like as you're going back to but I think in Hollywood too, we're often used to not seeing real diversity, and so people of color, not people of color.
That's fair. That's very fair.
And so but I think it was that same episode where I'm like, this is looking really, really white. And I'm like, and I started to notice that, like, okay, we've got the alternate versions of a lot of characters, but we haven't seen Adebayo yet. And so, and she's and we haven't seen Judo Master yet. And like, where are those?
Where would they be? Yeah.
So I mean, before the reveal, but I think it was when we got out in public. And I think that, to your credit, Mark, that like the first time we actually saw them out and about was when he was on that Peacemaker cycle or whatever, going to Argus, and we got to start to see people because before that we were just seeing him in his house, and so
we weren't seeing many crowds at that point.
We weren't seeing any crowds, and so I think that Gunn did a really good job. I don't think it didn't sound like he caught either one of us by complete surprise. Like, it sounds like he caught his friends when he was screening.
It does. He did. He clearly did.
He did, or a lot of other people, but yeah.
Well, we happen to kind of float around in a world where diversity matters a whole lot, and we're kind of sensitive to it,
Yes, right.
So it's not surprising that both of us at some point went, wait a minute.
This looks real white.
Something feels weird.
But I think we at least did better than Peacemaker did himself.
We definitely did better than he did. Poor guy.
Harcourt, Harcourt. She's like, you didn't notice the copy of Mein Kampf? I don't read books. Or how about the mural with Hitler? Probably should have got that one.
That was great when the camera just pans over this whole wall.
I do love too where they're like, where his friends are so like the benefit of the doubt, like, he probably didn't even notice,
right?
Like, which maybe says something about all of us. Okay, so I also want to get into our predictions, Mark, because we did make some predictions, or the predictions I remember. I asked you about the alien, who was
completely wrong on that one, wasn't I?
No, you were right. You were right because
I was almost right. I made a bold prediction about the very last time we see the alien. They call him kyphotic alien. I don't know where the name comes from, but that's what they call him, kyphotic. And I got most of it right until I decided to make a bold last minute kind of addition to it.
He decided to pull a Caleb on that one. So what I remember, so I'll tell you what I remember, and then you tell me your bold last minute prediction.
Yeah.
So I remember you saying, I think it's going to be a running gag, and we're going to just kind of see him throughout, and that really is all it amounts to, is a running gag. All it amounted to. So what was your bold?
Well, prediction? I said I think it's going to be a running gag the entire season, and that they're going to set us up to just think, oh, it's just a gag. Yeah. And then at the very last episode, because he feels a little negative and mysterious, that being Gunn, he's going to flip it on us. And this meaningless gag of a little bit of a scary creature is going to be important in a particular issue where he helps Peacemaker probably figure something out or solve something, or he does something for him that saves him. Or I added that on, that there was going to be this last moment where something and that nothing even close to that.
Well, it was still closer than my prediction, Mark, because I thought he was going to play a really essential role. I'm like, we see him. I think he's going to like somehow he's going to lead us into like meeting Darkseid or something. And that didn't happen.
He was mostly completely, totally meaningless.
Just meaningless.
We
didn't even get to see his world. We didn't even get to see
his world. It just feels... It comes to that question of, is there going to be a season 3? And there's been no announcement of it. And there's been several things that make you think maybe there's not. But then there's so many things that have been left open. Yeah. That it feels like you can't leave us all hanging here. We need to know what that alien is all about. We need to know what happens to Peacemaker's brother in World X, because he survived. I mean, that's an evil villain creation story right there. There's just so many of those little pieces that I feel like we need more. And why aren't they already telling us that there's going to be a season 3? And if anything, I feel like Gunn's kind of playing around, knowing that there's not going to be a season 3 and teasing us with other I don't know, man.
Because he's kind of said that he's not thinking about a season 3. The rest of these things will be explored in the broader DCU, which brings me to my next question. I'm curious how you felt about how we wrapped up the storyline on Earth X and how we wrapped up the season. What did you think about how all that came together?
Well, the ending of the season is also another reason why it feels like there should be a season 3. Yeah. Originally the ending we got wasn't the ending that was scripted. The ending that was scripted was when they all walk out of Checkmate and the classic Gunn slow walk of the heroes, and that was going to be it. They added him being sent to salvation, and my understanding is that that's going to become an important role in the next Superman. And Salvation is a comic series. I think it was 6 or 7 comic books of a world where they sent all metahumans and sort of I think it's also called Prison World or something like that. All the names get used, both Salvation and Prison World. And so I kind of feel like, yeah, that it's the world he got sent to is going to play a key role in the next Superman movie. I think maybe
Yep.
Superman and Lex get sent there, probably. Even though Lex isn't a metahuman, he's smart enough that he's sort of a metahuman. Just yeah. So I think, and I think it's going to be them a buddy movie of them trying to figure out how they're going to get out of there, kind of thing. I don't know, and
Yeah.
I don't think Peacemaker is going to play a big role in it. So
Yeah.
that leaves me again to go, well, we need to know the rest of his story. We need more about
Yeah.
him. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I love for the next Superman movie. I loved how they
Yeah.
ended it, kind of
Yeah.
teasing us and giving us this mysterious, slightly scary world that is going to play a key role. But for Peacemaker itself, I don't know that I almost, if they aren't going to have a season 3, which I personally I think they've already decided they're not. I wish that it would have ended with them all coming out of Checkmate. The only alternative to that is if instead of season 3, we're going to get a new television show called Checkmate, and the whole cast is central, and it's not just going to be Peacemaker throughout it. I could live with that, particularly if they go back and answer some of these questions that we've just brought up. I have a feeling that that's where we're going.
Yeah. Those are all great points, I think, Mark. And one of the criticisms I've seen of this season is that it sacrificed some story for setup, and particularly the last episode. And I think some folks have had to go back and say, like, okay, well, actually, this season's storyline really wrapped up with season 7, and season 8 is all about the future of the DCU. I didn't necessarily feel like that detracted from the season. I did kind of feel like you, that there's some open-ended questions here. I think especially with Earth X. I think I would have liked to have seen some more exploration of the dimensional portals that we didn't really get to see, and I think that would have been fun to see some of that over an extended episode. And I think you're right that Gunn has kind of said, right now we're not planning for a Peacemaker season 3. We've also heard him say that Superman and Lex are going to be on the same team in the next Superman movie. And we've heard him say that they're going to use salvation, but not really any plot points from it, which brings me to our other predictions, because when we were talking about Superman, both times we talked about Superman both times. I can't remember which time it was, but I said, hey, maybe the first time I said, hey, this alternate dimension that Lex has created, do you think it's going to live on? Do you think it's going to be something else? And you said you thought it was going to end up being Bizarro World, and I said I think it's going to be the Phantom Zone. And we don't really get an answer to any of that. But do you think we'll see in Salvation, since Gunn has said that he's not going to use the plot point of the actual comics, do you think we'll see some kind of exploration to tie into one of those things that we were predicting when we watched Superman?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think we're going to. I think the direction that we were going in, both of us, about what that weird pocket space universe is. I think we were trying to build too much into it. I think in the way that Gunn's setting this up, it's literally just a folding dimensional space where you can like wormhole from one place to the other pretty easily through these doors or through black holes or through whatever the opening that you're going through happens to use as its vehicle for it. And I don't think that he's making it to be anything more than that, or has plans for it to be, other than, you know, it's the subway of the universe. It's how you get from point A to point B. I'm at this point, I think that's what it is.
I love that. The subway of the universe from point A to point B. That's fantastic. I've got like 5 million questions that I really want to geek out about this season, because I loved it. I really love this season, but we've got to talk about theology and politics. So why don't we take a break, take a sip, and come back and move into our Theopolitico segment.
Welcome to our Theopolitico segment, where we'll talk about some of the theological and political issues that we see popping up that they're telling in this story that helps us think about our world today. So the first one that I want to talk about, you got Rick Flag Sr., you got Argus, and they're both sort of exercising secret control. They're doing surveillance. We're moving into punishment of metahumans. I'm curious, how does Peacemaker, not the character of the show,
Mhm.
invite us to sort of critique state or institutional power, like, especially when it's done like behind the veil of security or order?
Yeah.
And maybe in particular, what does it mean through the eyes of Christianity?
Yeah. So this is how it always happens, right? It's always done in the name of
Yeah,
security and
absolutely.
order. That's how they get people to feel safe. I mean, even like at the airports, it's mostly security theater, right?
Yeah,
It's about giving the
absolutely.
illusion of safety. And
Hmm.
so that's what governments are primarily about. That's how Hitler seized power. He
Yeah.
made people afraid of the other and talked about security,
Hmm.
and that's exactly what Donald Trump is doing as well in the United States, as he's talking about the dangers of immigrants or the
Yeah.
woke mob or whatever
Right.
term they're using for anyone else, just to make people feel a sense of dis-ease so that you can exert totalitarian control, and make people feel comfortable. So I
Yeah.
mean, in Peacemaker, right, we've got them hiding an entire dimension, it's a series of dimensions, right,
Hmm.
where they're going to put people without due process
Right.
indefinitely. And so this is exactly the kind of thing we're seeing right now with
100%.
deportation. We're not sending them to an alternate universe, but we may as well be, because we're
Right.
unlawfully
We
detaining
we are
and then
disappearing them.
disappearing them. Right. I mean, this is exactly what happens when democracies are destabilized in other countries as well. Think
Yep.
about the time I spent in Guatemala, where I listened to people talk about how the government had disappeared people as a once thriving democracy, with the help of
Yeah.
the United States, was completely destabilized, and people who dissented were just disappeared. And
Mhm.
so this is of course terrifying, and it's particularly terrifying when we think about it in any way, but especially I guess for us as Christians through the lens of Christianity, because Jesus was killed by an authoritarian
Turns
regime.
out.
And
Yeah.
so it's insane to think that people who call themselves Christians in the United States today would be supportive of an authoritarian government that is
Right.
doing the exact same thing that they did to Jesus. And it's because Christianity
Yeah.
has been so co-opted by the principalities and the powers that we can no longer distinguish the message of Jesus from the interest of the
Yeah.
state. So,
Yeah.
what do you think about it, Mark?
No, I completely agree. I agree with everything you said. I think we have to throw in there that the idea that power without transparency almost always ends up being sort of some form of tyranny,
Mhm.
and that's what they've worked really hard to not need to be transparent. They work really hard to look like they're being transparent, but lie instead of actually being transparent. And we're starting to see the heavy-handedness of what that ends up being. And of course, as Christians, knowing what happened to Jesus, knowing the powers that he stood up to, knowing that empire was the thing that got him killed. Um, I think our call is to always demand for accountability and
Mm,
transparency. And to do so is a way of following in the footsteps of Jesus, who was always trying to protect those that were marginalized and outsiders, because that's the folks that suffer first when this kind of thing starts happening, because they believe that not only will people notice less, but it's a great kind of a litmus test on how hard people are going to respond. And frankly, so far, there's not been enough of us responding in force. And I don't mean
yeah.
in any kind of violent force, but in numbers and in resistance. We're going to have to see a lot more of that. Um, I'm going to move on to the next question. We could talk a lot more about that, but there's so many interesting things that's going on
Yeah.
in this show this year. So that's what we're talking about, the current U.S. politics. Christian nationalism, and the sort of blending of religious identity with state power are sort of big concerns, obviously, as we just alluded to. How does Peacemaker's alternate world, Earth X, serve as, well, a cautionary mirror for what happens when religious identity becomes like part of political identity?
Right, you lose the entire message of the religion because it just becomes a tool of the state. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what we saw happen in Nazi Germany, that Christianity, as has happened a number of times throughout human history, that Christianity just becomes a tool for oppression.
Mm.
And that's what I mean. It's not like Nazis were actual followers of the teachings of Jesus. It was just whatever tool they had to oppress others, and it didn't matter if it was Christianity or whatever. It's just the way you frame the language.
Yeah.
And so, in Peacemaker, we of course see that that. That the Nazi kind of ideology and philosophy has been used to oppress others and to put people in camps who are not white. And so this, as Christians, anything remotely like this ought to be completely it ought to really just kind of set at odds with Jesus's teachings, since Jesus's teachings were so about finding those
Right.
on the margins. You can't follow Jesus and think that he's okay with systemic oppression. You can't
Yeah.
follow Jesus and be okay with only one group lifted up, especially the group that's already in power, because his entire ministry was about confronting that. And Mark, to me too, this is
Mhm.
also why theology is so important, because theology that focuses primarily on like the otherworldly is is theology, I think, that is primed to be utilized by the principalities and the powers of this world.
Yeah.
Right? Jesus wasn't crucified because he talked about the otherworldly. Rome wouldn't have cared about that. That wouldn't have
Right.
made any difference to them. In fact, that's
Not a
good for
bit.
them, right? Don't
It
focus on
is.
this life, focus on the
Worry
next life.
about, yeah.
That's right. And so I think that that's one of the main problems with American Christianity, is American Christianity has become so hyper individualized, and it has
Mhm.
become so focused on the otherworldly that it's easy for people to use to oppress others, because you've
Yeah.
lost the radicality of the troublemaker who was Jesus of Nazareth 2,000 years ago.
Absolutely. Yeah,
What do you think
completely
about it?
agree. Yeah, no, I agree. You got the whole the everything that you just said about Jesus, who Jesus was, and how this stands over and against it. And I think even it's interesting because the folks who are kind of backing this tend to be biblical literalists.
Yeah.
And when you move the question from Jesus to God, in that literalist sense, God created all these things and named all these things good. And if that is the case, then you would seem that God is just in the act of creation, insisting on inclusion and equity and honoring diversity. And the fact that folks are actually trying to erase that, the very folks who claim that this is who they're
Yeah.
following and what matters to them the most, it's almost mind-boggling, the massive gap and divide in those two worldviews, where on Sunday they hold one and on the rest of the days they hold a completely different one. In a lot of ways it's everything that's wrong with the religion, particularly Christianity today, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it absolutely is. Because Christianity has kind of become white Christian nationalism
Yeah,
in the United States. It's
yeah. Unfortunately,
completely
yeah.
I think if Jesus walked in to most churches today and heard what they were talking about,
Oh
heard
wow,
what they were saying about him, it would be completely unrecognizable. I think he
yeah,
would be so embarrassed that a religion from his teachings became this tool of oppression.
yeah.
It would just be completely unrecognizable.
All right, I'm going to squeeze one last question
Yeah.
in here. So Chris, Peacemaker, and his allies.
Yeah.
This is, this is one of the we frequently talk about this when we end up talking about superhero shows. He and his allies sometimes use deception. They sometimes use force, or sometimes even worse than that, to achieve, quote, greater goals.
Yeah.
When, if ever, is it morally justifiable to use bad means for a good end? And how should Christian ethics sort of navigate those tensions?
Yeah, it's really hard, but I mean, I think for Christians, it's not okay to use bad
Right.
means to justify good ends because that's contrary to the teachings of Jesus. And so,
Yeah.
Jesus talks to us about a nonviolent reformation of the heart. And I think particularly, the gospel where Jesus is hanging on the cross at the crucifixion next to the two other people who are called thieves,
Thieves.
and
Yeah.
and they're really like violent insurrectionists who were trying to liberate Judea, probably in the 60s of the Common Era,
Hmm.
right before the fall of the temple, and
Right.
since the Gospels are written after that, and Jesus then is there kind of as the alternate way, like the non-violent
Yes.
resistance way. And to me, like, that's exemplifying in the gospels that the way of Jesus is the way of nonviolent resistance. So I think, like, the way of Peacemaker is not doesn't actually make peace, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the criticisms we see in the Bible is that the Roman Empire, they brought peace through violence. They brought
Right.
peace through conquest. The Pax Romana, is peace brought through conquest. As long as you're willing to do what the Romans say, then
Hmm.
and be Roman and worship in the way that they choose, follow the norms that they choose. Then that's peace, right? But that's
Yeah.
not true peace. And Jesus talks instead about peace that arises through justice and not the other way around. So I think for Christians, it's tough to navigate, but especially when others are using unjust means. But the Christian response, I think, is a path of nonviolent resistance.
Yeah.
What do you
I'm
think?
100% with you on that. Last time that we talked about this, I talked about how when we solve problems using violence, we think we've solved the problem, but all we've done is proven that violence in our minds work, and it never does. It's not a lasting peace. It's not a
Yeah.
lasting solution. It's just teaching us that we should keep going back to violence. I also think part of the issue here, in terms of Christian ethics, is that when you allow whatever to happen, if the ends are the right ends, what you end up doing is you end up treating people as means
Yeah.
to an end. And
Yeah.
that is stands over and against everything that we're supposed to be. The people and their well-being is always supposed to be the ends. That's what
Mm,
matters. And if
mm.
you're stepping on that in order to get to something else, then you're missing the whole point, and you're definitely not reaching an end that is something that you should be proud of or happy about or satisfied with. So I've got like
Absolutely.
three more questions, but we're running out of time, and we've actually already run over our time on this segment of the show, and we don't want to miss our favorite segment, the "Make Me Look Stupid" segment. So I'm going to stop right there. Maybe I'll go back to one of these questions for my "Make Me Look Stupid." So I don't know. We'll see.
Mm,
Uh,
mm.
but we're going to take a quick drop, have another sip of our beverages, and we'll catch everybody on the other side. Oh,
Welcome back to the Make Me Look Stupid segment of the Moonshine Jesus Show. And this is, I think, one of our favorite segments where we get
oh,
to try to
absolutely.
make each other look stupid. We might ask each other questions about this that we don't know about, that we might already feel stupid about. We might ask our co-host a question about the future to try and make a prediction, like we were talking about earlier today, or any number of things. But I think to go back to my usual fare, where I want to try and
Oh no.
make you make a prediction, Mark.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. I
and
felt
I've
I felt
got
this coming.
I've thought about this, and
Okay.
I've recognized too, unlike usual, that I will also have to make a prediction.
Okay,
So I'm ready
good.
for that. Okay.
All right, this is good.
And but before I do, I also just want to lift up that I've been doing a really bad job this season of stealing any questions. You
I
know?
know. You know what's terrible is I basically stole all of my own questions and some of my answers.
Yeah.
It's not exactly 100%, but I all but answered a lot of my own maybe. So if you remember, if you paid any attention to my thoughts earlier, I basically just handed you answers on a platter for the few questions that I have. So
Yes. Okay. Good.
you
Thank
may
you,
not
Mark.
have I see. I think maybe you've leveled your game up. You're
Oh,
not
I like
actually
that.
stealing the questions anymore. You're asking things that get me to steal my own questions, and that's high gameplay, sir. That is high gameplay.
Well, that's that's a lot of credit you're giving me. Okay, so here's a question I want you to make a prediction about.
All
Okay,
right.
Mark. So we find them on Salvation,
Mhm.
or we find Peacemaker on Salvation, and we
Yeah.
find the plot that they're probably going to be moving other people there. We've already talked about maybe it's going to be Superman, maybe it's going to be Lex Luthor. In the final scene of this season, we hear something off in the distance, kind of making some kind of monstrous sound. What do
Yeah.
you think that is off in the distance? And do you think that whatever it is what Lex and Superman, and maybe Peacemaker, maybe others are going to have to team up to fight?
I think those are parademons,
Mm-hmm.
which are connected to Darkseid. I think we're going to get Darkseid in the new Superman, the Lex Superman movie. And I think that those are because in the comics, if I remember right, the Salvation series, there's one of the things that they have to deal with are parademons.
Yep.
And they are kind of like bug-like creatures, and we
Yes.
hear a little chatter that could almost be
Yep.
bugs in the background. And so that's my guess. I immediately thought, oh, that's those guys. I couldn't remember the name at the point in time, but I think they're the parademons, and I think that it's like Gunn kept saying, well, there's going to be a big reveal. We're going to get some big names in the ending of this season. And I think that that's what he meant, was that he gave us the hint that Darkseid's going to show up. Of course, Darkseid's one of Superman's biggest villain that he has to face. So that's my guess. That's where I think we're going. What are you thinking?
I actually am in the same place on that one, because you're right. The Salvation story arc is one that ultimately results in Darkseid and them confronting Darkseid. So I think that even though we're not using the actual plot of Salvation, unless Gunn changes his mind, which he sometimes
which
does,
he's prone to do,
that I still think that end result will be the same. And my thought was parademons as well. And we've seen them before because in the Zack Snyder version of the DCEU. And I think we saw a very poorly executed version of what that could look like.
Very much so.
But I think it's smart to lean into a very big bad that we've got all of our heroes kind of teaming up to fight. I think that worked really well in the Marvel Cinematic Universe whenever we were working towards Thanos, the Infinity Stones saga. And I think that really was something that was able to build on each other. I think Gunn brings that, that experience. And I think that that's been something that Marvel has really been, I think, trying to search for too. Like, what's this next phase going to look like and stuff. I think this is a good way to go into that. So I'm with you. I actually think that's what's going to happen too. So Mark, that means that if we're right, we're both right. If we're wrong,
well, that's all right with me.
You have a question for me?
Yeah, I do. And we've already danced around it on and off. And I'll but ask the question out loud in the first segment. Do you think there's going to be a Peacemaker season 3? Or is the story just going to play out in all these other spaces?
Well, perhaps we'll see a checkmate. Is that what I'm going to No, I believe that's the answer I heard earlier.
That is the answer you heard earlier.
I think look, Gunn has said that he doesn't have any plans for it right now. I think that the hard part is that Peacemaker is a really popular character, and he's also and Gunn has also said some contradictory things on this too, because he's been asked like if he's going to be taking kind of characters that haven't been real well known and building the DCU around those, and he's like, no, it's really hard to get people out to movies to see those types of
Yeah.
characters. Whereas on the flip side, he took Guardians of the Galaxy, which was kind of
Right.
a group of those characters, and made it
Definitely
blockbuster,
was.
right?
Absolutely.
And so, and he also took Peacemaker, who nobody really knew,
Nope.
and made him kind of the corner of the DCU
Right.
for. And so, I think it's tough to say. I think it's kind of going to depend as he gets deeper into this. What he has the capacity to do, because I do think he's going to want to be real involved in Peacemaker,
Yeah.
and whether or not he feels like he can tell Peacemaker's story in another venue or not, because he's also said that that's his favorite thing he's ever done, and so I think it's going to be hard to let go of. So I actually think we don't know yet. I don't think Gunn knows yet for sure what he's going to do.
Yeah.
With the character.
I think he does.
You do?
I think he does know.
Yeah.
And I do think that the answer is checkmate. I don't think, when you consider that was going to be the ending of the show before a producer came in and said, no, we need to throw in salvation.
Yeah.
I think that ending with it, you do the traditional Gunn slow walk of the heroes, the camera pans up to the checkmate logo on the building, and the theme music from Peacemaker is playing over top of the shot of checkmate, and you even get Eagly right at the end, does the Eagly at the end of the song. I think that's his note to us of Peacemaker is now checkmate. And I think that comes from him working on this, him loving the show, loving the character Peacemaker, but then also falling in love with all of these other characters. And I think he is excited about exploring those other characters even more as we go into Peacemaker. We've got Flag trying to send metahumans off, and checkmate is one of the things they do is navigate those spaces between humans and metahumans. I think it all fits a little too nicely to have been a mistake or an unknown. I think he knows that this is where he's going with it. That's my guess.
That sounds good, Mark. I can't wait to see what it is.
Yeah,
Either
me too.
way,
Please.
no matter what
The
it is,
sooner the better.
I have faith in James Gunn. I
He's
feel
doing
like
it.
he's doing
killing it.
he is killing it. I mean, none of the movies, superhero movies he's ever directed, have below an 80% fresh rating either.
There's a reason for that. Yeah,
there's a reason for that. It's very enjoyable. So, hey, Mark, I've got a question for you. So we've got a pretty lively chat today. A number of questions. How about, what if we each take a question from the chat and answer it? Does that sound okay?
Works fine for me. Yeah, let's do it.
Just real quick, and then we'll each do a question, and we'll then let you know what we're going to watch next week and wrap this up. So,
you might have to. I hit a wrong button, and all of my chats are gone. So
okay. Well, how about this? I'll give you. Well, I'll do one first. It's my turn. I'll do one, and then I'll give you one. And
that's perfect. That'll work.
And I'll take the earliest one. This one says, do you believe the only way to be saved is through Jesus Christ and no other? And so, I think that this brings, even as people begin to like deconstruct and they start to think about a different way, a more progressive way of leaning. A lot of times people still hold on to that thought about salvation, like your soul. I think what people mean a lot of times is like your soul going to heaven when you die. Right. And I would say that, at least for me, that's not really the point of religion, or it's not something that resonates with me. I'm not particularly concerned with that, and it's something ultimately beyond knowing anyway. But for me, like whenever I talk about salvation, which I typically don't find very helpful to talk
Right.
about. But if I'm talking about salvation, I'm talking about the way that following Jesus saves us from ourselves, saves us
Yeah.
from pride and greed and resentment and authoritarianism and hatred.
100%.
And
Yeah.
and if you follow Jesus in that way, then it's salvific.
Mhm.
So I see value in following Jesus because for me, Jesus is the one who teaches me to live in that way. Do I think that Jesus is the only way to come to that conclusion? No. And so I would say that part of adopting kind of a progressive Christian worldview is letting go of some of that other theological baggage. So I know you could talk a ton about that too, Mark, but I'll give
Okay.
you another
Okay.
question. This is the other
Yep.
question, another question that's come through. We of course are sponsored by an organization called Progressive
Progressive
Christianity,
Christianity. Yeah.
right? So Michael D. O'Kelly has said, why not progressive humanism? Mark, why do you subscribe to progressive Christianity and not
Well,
progressive humanism?
technically, I actually call myself an agnostic Christian humanist. And so I think it's a great question.
Mhm.
But for me, having the guide of Christianity, the person of Jesus and his teachings, for me is a very helpful model for me to be able to look to and understand both what my relationship with God can be and might look like, but also what that love, if God is love, being in relationship with love, with the thing that's connective tissue for this world, for us, the universe, being in a relationship with that, Jesus's life shows me what that looks like lived out. Are there other people who could do the same thing? Yes, absolutely. And there's plenty of folks from Buddha to Gandhi. There's plenty of folks who show you a little bit what that looks like. But for me, because of my heritage, because of my background, the teachings and the life of Jesus show me exactly what love that's connected to the divine looks like when it's lived out here on earth. Does that lead to an outcome that looks a lot like humanism? I believe it does. And that's a good thing. But for me, I like to include the Christianity because it really does. It's a teaching tool that helps me greatly and grounds me more fully in the divine because of who Jesus was.
I love it. Thanks so much, Mark. And there are other questions here too. So thank you all for engaging, watching, and
Absolutely.
putting questions on there as well. I'd love to spend more time, but we're already over time, and we've got
Fair
to talk
enough.
about what we're gonna watch next week. And you had an idea, Mark. You want to
Oh
share
yeah,
with
I'm
us?
excited about this. I have a
Yeah.
couple of friends who have encouraged me to catch this, and I don't know why I haven't watched it yet. It's only a couple of weeks old, but I don't know if you remember Marvel's What If. It was
Mm-hmm.
a great little cartoon
Yep.
series, and they did all kinds of fun imagining what. And one of them is what if basically Marvel existed in a zombie world. And it maybe was the best of all those episodes. It was
Yeah.
great.
Yep.
And it was so good that they've gone ahead and made it its own series. So we have 4 episodes of Marvel Zombies, which is on Disney Plus. I've heard great things about it. I think that could be a lot of fun. What do you think?
Oh, I'm in. I'm in.
All right,
I
excellent.
probably need to go back and watch the What If zombie episode
I think so too. Yeah,
just to get really into it, you know? So I'm excited
exactly.
about that.
I
That
like it.
sounds like a lot of fun. Well, thank you, Mark, and thanks for all of you who joined us. We appreciate you joining us each week. We have so much fun starting off the week like this, and it really encourages us to watch some of our favorite shows and to really get a chance to both geek out about it and just love the show, and also to talk about theology and politics. So thanks for making that possible. We're glad you were with us today, and we'll see you next time on the Moonshine Jesus Show.